How's it going, everybody? My name is Elder Gonzalez, and today we're going to take a look at Intermediate React version 5. This course is just to help you write production grade React application. A course taught by Brian Holt. Shout out to Brian Holt, by the way. Uh, he's a software engineer that has previously worked at Microsoft, Reddit, Netflix. He also was the PM of Snowflake, a data lake as a service, and now he's a current VP at product, VP of product at SQLite Cloud. So with his robust experience, we're gonna see what are the tools and techniques that we can use as a way to build these production-ready React applications for companies, or also for yourself, or even for yourself. So, techniques like code splitting, server-side rendering, as well as transitions in testing, which is the today's topic, as well as tools like TypeScript, uh, Tailwind, and Redux. So this is the core structure here. We look at hooks in depth. We're gonna make a quick recap briefly about all of this topic, the value proposition of each one of them, okay, and then finally jump into testing. So hooks in depth, the value proposition of this, because Facebook has specific problems when it comes to rendering components, they need to develop some tools and some particularly tools, custom hooks to deal with those scenarios. So you have useref, you have useref, use reducer, use callback, use memo, use layout, use ID. In Tailwind, this is something that now the React community has embraced because it allows you to write this little tiny CSS class where the compiler, the Tailwind compiler, takes and generates is a minimized version of your CSS. Why this is important? First, because the community, and second, that now you can is focus on writing your CSS without having to maintain a huge CSS code base, which is something that is quite problematic. And unlike other solutions like Bootstrap and Material Design, when those are UI design systems, you can build UI design system in Tailwind, which is something that a lot of people actually are doing. But Tailwind is focused only on help you to write CSS class. We also look at the anatomy, the compiler, the transpiler, as well as the auto prefixer, how you can start using that, how you can use plugins, how you can extend the functionality of that, as well as how helpful it is to use their breakpoint to build layouts, whether it's on mobile, tablet, laptop, or large screens. We also look now at the advanced React performance like code splitting, server-side rendering. Code splitting is focused on fetch the minimal necessary code to teach our app to set up and running by showing something to the user while we are hurrying up everything in the background. Okay, so this is when service worker concept enters the chat, and how it's being generated. Again, the value we are going to mention is the value proposition of each one of those topics. Code splitting, server-side rendering, which focuses on provide provide a pre-render version on the initial load. So why is this? Because we have several rendering modes. The industry, in an effort to take a look at new ways of trying to improve the user experience, because back in the old days, and sometimes what you have is, for example, WordPress applications or PHP applications, Ruby on Rails as well. You have now to wait anytime you want to, or the user wants to navigate through one element or to one different page. So, for example, in an e-commerce, when you want to go through the landing page, you write that and then wait for send the request. The browser send the request. The server detect that and say, okay, it passed through a couple middlewares and some security layers up to finally reach the route handler and say, all right, so now that I get this, okay, this is what I'm going to render it, which means I'm going to generate is the HTML of that particular page, the landing page that this user requests, and send it back as a response. So on the browser, it detects that, receives that, and it transforms the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript thanks to the critical rendering path, which is a mechanism of how browsers transform is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript into pixel on the screen. So, because this process, you have to do that every time you visit a new link, okay? The industry, well, find a way to actually make things much faster. So that's what we have, for example, things like, so they answer this, or they ask this question: wouldn't it be better if we now can show the content to the user completely, but we have to wait for that by showing a loading screen, and once the application is loaded entirely on the client, now the user can navigate, and any time that it needs data, we can send this streams of data, JSON, small tiny data from the backend, and not the entire HTML document. This is something good. This is also known as client-side rendering, the single page application. So with that, it actually worked pretty well from the user perspective, but for crawlers, it's a mess, because crawlers needs the content to be available immediately. They won't wait for your content to be loaded, and especially if SEO is something that you want, that impact heavily in doing that. So then we have with this concept called server-side rendering, which is, okay, all right, would it be better then to now pre-render the entire HTML on the initial load, okay, so we can show something to the user quickly, while we are now loading is the content in the background, and then becomes the or page application becomes interactive. So this is part of the challenge of how the industry is trying to face and bring solutions for that. For example, you have frameworks like Quick from the creator of Angular. You have frameworks like Vue, which is a reactivity system. You have solutions like React, which is actually the precursor with AngularJS of all of this thing, you know. And that's interesting. That's brings also a lot of perspective of now how this server-side rendering is done using React, especially with Vite, and how it is constructed, and also how you can even send chunks of data of your HTML as soon as they are available, thanks to React. So that's a very interesting topic. A topic that goes to Next.js. Okay. So then we look now at the next topic, which is low priority rendering. Remember, after all, this tool was designed for Facebook to solve Facebook problems. So we have now something called like use defer value and use transition, where when you need to prepare React to load something heavier, you use transition hook. In the use transition or in the use defer value is to say, hey, I already load this heavy stuff and I want to do something about it. And again, this concept of low priority and re-rendering and high priority is because sometimes for the Facebook problem they want to drop some renderings. Okay, hey, if we're doing something heavy here, I want you to drop this rendering component here. I don't want you to do that kind of thing. We also look at TypeScript, a way of how you can migrate your applications from JSX to TSX. The value proposition of this is provide a live coding documentations about the intent that you have when you wrote the code for someone else. We look at the anatomy, which is the compiler, the output generated by the compiler, as well as how you can integrate that with ESLint, something very, very useful. The libraries that you need to install that, how you setting up things with ESLint, and also how you can start or where you can start your migrations. It is important to start with your React Leaf components or your Leaf React components. Let's say your models, and then you go from the service, you go from the React hooks components, your forms, your third-party libraries that you might have. Remember that from 10 to 60%, it'll be misery. And the more you do that, the less you're gonna fight the compiler. Okay. So after past that 60 or 70 percent, so now things starting to happen fast. You can move off. You can move off there pretty fast. And another value proposition of setting TypeScript in your React code is because it allows you to verify the correctness of your application by setting some script in your package JSON, and from there, when you are going to or before you deploy your code to production, you use something called CI/CD server, which is our server to say, hey, let me take the project out of you or from a GitHub repo or from any artifact or any repo. Let me take that code from you. Let me now run is this test. For example, do we have the proper code format? Code formatting. Is our code is linted? TypeScript check is actually work as expected, so we don't have any error. And then our unit testing, which is something that we want to talk about that. So once you pass all of these different checks, okay, in that server, now your code is ready for production. Again, this is for scale web app or companies, enterprise web app. All right, cool. So then I look at Redux. And the value proposition of this is because what happens when you want to now manage app level data. So for example, users, order, products, how you can do that, okay? Right now, or we rely on third-party libraries like Redux, for example, but now React 18 caught us for surprise. We don't need to use Redux, and which it provide a feature called context that allows you to do that. The only trade-off is that it introduces this indeterministic behavior. But at the beginning, context was something that it was terrible. Now it's better. And even though that, after all, Redux is all about to have a central store where you can have your data, there then come things to make things much more easy, which is less verbose, especially with Redux, like Redux Toolkit that allow us to do that. So we can now look at the anatomy of Redux. What are the components or the libraries that we need to install? Redux with React, and RTKey with RTKey with Redux. Okay, how can we start to work? How can we start working with Redux? By defining a store or configure the store, and then slice. Inside of your slice, what you're gonna define is your reducers. You're gonna export your reducer as well as your actions. The way you can access to that store is the way how you can store data. You can think of Redux as this is an imperfect analogy, like some sort of database where you can dispatch or query data from that. So we have here now Redux. Okay, we can dispatch or store data using use dispatch and the proper action from that slide. And when it comes to read data out of that, we use selector, and the selector is a subscription, and you have to be careful with that because you only want to fetch the bare minimum data. Otherwise, if you fetch or you subscribe to an object that is big enough, anytime that one of those properties change, Redux, we're gonna detect that and say, hey, I need to re-render this component. Pretty bad if your object is large. Okay. Even though, okay, by looking at this and understand how you can define your store, how you can write and read data out of this, we also look at how can we now perform API requests by creating a store thanks to React Query, where this store is going to generate is endpoints, query endpoints, where we can now use in any of our React components. That's great. Then I look at the React DevTools, where the value proposition of this is not only the ability to time travel to do time travel debugging, but also, which is something very compelling, that let's say your user crashed your app, you dump the Redux history to any error logging service, where you can take that, put it in Redux, put it in your Redux DevTool, and essentially look time travel through your user crashing your application. That's pretty compelling. Totally. Then we look at Redux, and testing, which is what we're gonna do today. And yeah, so testing, after all, or the value proposition of testing, is not only to make your code robust, but also to write tests the way your users should use your app. Okay, as a way to have much more confidence when you deploy your code to production. So, because testing is one of the favorite topic of every software developer, Are you kidding me? This is the last section of this course, so buckle up. Here we look at now of the recommendation from the Brian Hall methodology of writing tests, and I think this particular checklist is quite interesting. First, try to write tests like with the user approach. So for example, hey, what will happen if I hover over this element? What will happen if I click here? Okay. Do not test UI implementation, or do not test UI elements, because that's something that can change a lot, and quite frankly is something that can make your test to fail. Again, try to test these user stories. Make your test succinct, precise. I don't want a novel about it. I just want to know what tests fail. When you're trying to fix a bug, one of the benefits of doing this or doing this testing is that write a test that failed and fix it. Okay, so anytime you so now that you have a guarantee that you fix that bug, and also avoid any regressions, something that is in demand and valuable for a lot of people, for a lot of company as well. It's like, hey, is this bug already happened? Yes, we already created this test that mimicking that behavior that failed. That we fix that, we implement the code to fix that, and then we deploy that. Okay. And also develop the habit to remove flaky tests. Okay, flaky tests, run tests. The only flaky test that is allowed is end to end. So now take a look at the anatomy of the testing for React app. Is like, first, well, the blah blah blah. Yeah, first is the, how do you put it? Okay, VTest testing library. Yeah, VTest testing library and Happy Done. So the first is the JavaScript, is the testing framework that is based on Jest, which was fun fact, it was a tool. It was a Facebook product that was released in 2011 and then open source in 2014. That this Jest is based on Jasmine. So if you write a test on Jasmine, it'll work also in Vite through transitivity. And I also look at the testing library, which is in this was testing library was meant to replace something called Enzyme, which was developed by Airbnb as a way to test React component, which is something that we didn't have before. And doing that, it was horrible. It was terrible. So thanks to all the people that actually do that possible, because now it's less flaky, it's better to use, it's faster. So Enzyme is not meant to be used with testing library. They are mutually exclusive. Okay. And another thing is the Happy Done, which is this lightweight version of GSDOM, a no implementation of the DOM. And this is something which is the core of all of our tests. We have now the testing framework, that is expose all of these nice little functions where we can start to run our tests, as well as the library that allows to test our React component or UI element, testing library React. And also is the environment where we're going to run all of our tests, which is this node implementation of the DOM. So with all of these components in place, all right, we're using is Happy DOM because we don't have to spin up a browser to run our test, which is great since doing that is low. In Playwright, here, for example, if you do that, you can go with something called like Playwright or Puppeteer. Again, this is for end-to-end testing. Those kind of tests are very expensive, they're flaky, so you better prioritize what needs to be tested on that. All right, enough of the talk. So now let's go into actually do that work. Get our hands dirty. All right. So we test our first component. So first we look at how we can test component. Actually, that was not that hard. In fact, remember to write tests. Try to write tests like the user will use your app. With our components, we are testing, hey, we're passing the proper properties and we're getting the proper data out of this. That's this component. Then we look at now how can we test these user interactions in components with that reliance on that, okay? Which quite frankly, it was interesting because here is when we're looking at these particular techniques on the development on the when you are how do you put it when you are now writing unit tests, okay, techniques like use the find by test ID, because now what you have to do is this function is looking for a data tag on your component when you mount that, a data tag dash test ID followed by a value, okay, and this makes our test decouple from the implementation, which means make our test less brittle, much modular. So that's something interesting to know this. Hey, this is a particular technique that is relevant for that. And then we look now. Okay, and then we look now at how can we test custom hooks. See, custom hooks, one of the benefits of making them, or sorry, part of the reason of testing hooks is that it's great because they come independently testable in our code. In our code. You got this. Okay. All right. So this is one of the great thing of testing custom hooks, because now they become independently testable in our code, so we can extract those custom hooks in their own files and make it and test, which is one of the recommendation or rule of thumbs if you want to have a happy life as a React developer. Okay, try to contain your custom hook in their own files, and try to isolate them into their own files. So the way how we test custom hooks in the old way, all right, uh, because after all, the question is, since React hooks only works on React components, how can we test that? The answer is that how can you test that outside of that? The answer is you can. So a good analogy here is that um, mm, a good analogy here, a good analogy here is like, how do you test that a light bulb uh, work as expected in a particular socket without that socket, without plugging into that socket? The question is that you can. You need to have that socket. So this is pretty much like with React. So here, the way how we test our custom hooks, the old way, is that, well, let's go to define a function, all right, that we're going to receive is the output that we're going to store. In fact, what you're doing is interesting. You are effectively here are, which is this. Let me actually show the proper code, which is this. Which is this. Okay, this is how you do this. Okay, okay, which is you define is now your function that are going, that inside of that you are going to write as a React component, which, if you remember, after all, this is just a function. Okay, and this function is where we now use the custom hooks. All right, we assign that to our global variable here. Okay, and then we are running everything here. So he was saying is that, hey, I want you to now on the DOM run all of this node as well as the life cycle there. Okay, and then we get the value out of this. Okay, this is kind of silly, right? This is kind of silly. Oops, let me actually define this like so. Okay, yeah, this is actually kind of silly. What? No? Oh my god. Okay, anyway, so this is actually kind of silly because we are actually here mocking. It's like sacrificing the good, the right goat. So then right below is where we wrote our test. Okay, right below this is when we wrote our test here, and that is this particular test. In fact, let me actually rewrite this, because in our particular case we want to test if this hook doesn't contain any data or display. Remember, write your test like user story. So we want is show no animal when provide exactly. So show no animals. Okay, or in this case, give an empty list. Exactly, give an empty list with no animals provide. That may be one way, or is not, or show an empty list. Show an empty list with no animals here provide. That will be another way to put it. Okay. And here is when we say, okay, now let me is write the test that we're going to actually get the data that we need to once we run this file following this shape, which is the breed list. That is the way how can we, in fact, let me do this. Follow me along here on the code. If you can look at this, this is how we expect to return the data. We expect to return is the breed list as a string, as well as the query status, okay, where in our case is this loading error on success. That's one of the powerful things of using TypeScript, because it makes your tests way much more easy to. So here what we're going to receive is the breed list, as well as a loading state from the use breed list, or in our case is the mock function here, like get breed list. Yeah, we're supposed to pass something like the animal here, okay, or because we want to run our test, we're going to pass anything here, right? So now we make our expectations. So we expect that the breed list that to have length 0, okay, and also to expect that the loading value here to contain is loading, okay, especially if you're passing this the first time. So now here, okay, so this supposed to work as expected, right? It say now query client. This test actually failed for this. Let me see why it failed. It say carousel and pet and user breed list. It say, hey, test GSX, TypeScript error, query client cannot invoke with new tests. Okay, interesting. New, all right. Since this is a new, okay, this we are building is an object. Okay, there is also something interesting here that's going on, because anytime you use the keyword new when creating an object, what it's doing behind the scenes, especially in the JavaScript, is to link this to the object instance through the prototype change, as well as providing some features that are relevant to the language. So for example, new in JavaScript, the new operator here. Let me put this in English. Follow me along with this, right? Okay. So the new operator lets the developer to create an instance of user-defined objects type, or one of the built-in objects type that has a constructor function. So this new key, this new operator allows you to create instance or from user-defined objects, where in our case we're using is query client, or built-in objects that are coming from or the JavaScript itself, or from a particular API, whether it's on the browser or the server. Okay. So in our case, this is the way how we define classes, because after all, functions are a type and a special type of object. Okay. Here when we say, hey, I want you to create now a new instance from this object, so I can access to their property and methods, for example here, right? And there is also something that is going on behind the scenes. Something that is going behind the scenes. This might go beyond the scope of this, as well as this is something very, very, very important, especially to understand, because now this is the new mechanism after the EXIS, since the language is in constant evolution. We're going to leave that to another video. For example, the next month, I'm going to take a look at how to do that with JavaScript. The classes and object, the classes and object, and the OOP, or the POO, the prototype object oriented. That's one, and the other is the async in JavaScript. I am quite familiar to working with asyncs and promise, but I don't know what is the inner mechanism that is going on. And knowing the inner mechanism is something that is going to save you a lot of headache. Okay, cool. So back here to this. Follow me here. This is what we're doing here. It's like say, hey, I want you to now create a new instance from this object, which is user generated object from this library, okay? And this is the parameters that we're gonna pass through. In this particular case is the argument that we're gonna pass through the parameters. What is the difference between arguments and the parameters? Arguments stand for values, and parameter is for on the definition, okay, on the things that are receiving. So the name of the name of this representation of that. All right, and then we're defining as a normal function here in JavaScript. Again, a first-class citizen in the language, and a special type of object. Okay. So yeah. So after we define is our grid list here, where we're gonna pass. This is the parameter that it's going to receive. Exactly, parameter. And the value that we're gonna send is nothing. That's the argument. Okay. So pretty much this function, what it's doing is to mimicking is the behavior of the React as a way to return nothing, but working with this custom hook, and then now letting the testing library say, hey, you know what? I want you to now mount this component on the happy DOM, render it, pass through all of the life cycle, assign the value that we're receiving here, and then return that. And this is pretty basically how things work the other way. Okay? How we test custom hooks for that. I think I get receive an error here which says class constructor query client cannot be invoked without new. What? Did I save that? And everything went well, right? Okay. Pretty much that. So now this file, what it's saying is like, hey, we're gonna pass. So we're going to import from btest is now the function that we need to actually run our tests, okay, as well as some nice little function, especially for testing UI components in React. We're gonna, in this case, since we're testing is a very specific React feature, the custom hooks, that is using behind the scenes is query, React query as a way to fetch data. And one of the great things of query uh, is that, hey, here is the key, here is the URL, here is the refetch methods. Uh, this is the way how you do that, with use query here. Okay, you tell, hey, here's the key. Uh, yeah, here's the key. Here is what you're gonna catch. By the way, and here is we also pass is inside of the fetch breadth list is the URL, which is something that we define here. Okay, or you can abstract that a little bit and say, hey, we're going to now have a centralized place where we have our base or base URL. So we're gonna have, for example, is cons, or we're gonna have is our node environment variable, where we are configure is our applications per environment, So we are creating is our fronting and the server environment driven, which is something that a lot of companies actually are doing that. Why is that? Because it improves the testability of your application, as well as how you can enable features on the fly. Okay, cool. So this is what we're doing and what we are using behind the scenes here. We're using is fetch in this particular case because this is code that is going to run on the client. Okay. We can also use, for example, Axios that rely on Ajax, a way of how you can make asynchronous JavaScript requests, or Ajax stands for asynchronous JavaScript XML. You can also send is JSON as well. In wow, 20 months ago. Interesting. Totally. Mm-hmm. Very, very interesting. Okay. Totally. I did. Oh, because I fixed this code. I thought, okay. All right, so back to the test. I'm gonna close this. I'm gonna close this well. The config that you got it. This is how you have to indicate to your vid that, hey, we're gonna use this the happy DOM. This is one of the things that I don't like too much about this. It's like, again, because this is hard coded, I would like to import is the happy DOM and say, hey, this is what you're gonna use, but this is what it is. Okay, so this is the code of how you can test your custom hooks. Okay, which is great, but this is the old way to do this. Okay, now we're gonna see is the new way. All right. And then we define here our test. Now we are going to see the new way. The new way, which is using is one of the yeah, which is using sorry. And I think that's one of my issue there, because especially when you want to, yeah, there are hooks, completely. There are hooks. There are hooks in VS Code. Yeah, there were hooks. Yeah, there were hooks. For example, here with context. and testing. Yep. No. Mm-hmm. Mm. Oh, we're gonna do touch test. What it was? What's on the low? Yeah, there you got it. Okay, exactly. I define this here, and I want to test. Yeah, get by text. Yeah, because I wanna develop a test here to actually, because it's author list component display author list correctly, authors create here, as well as the component here. Mm-hmm. And they are not using is exactly using is Axios for that. Browser router, main nav, main content. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Render is deprecated, yes. An old application here. And yeah, the thing here is that was quite interesting, because in my case, like, I want to now to test is if the drop down yeah, I want to test if the drop down actually, okay, testing article create component. Because I want to test if that component UI test for creating and editing an article with no author. And this is it. Okay. Why is this important? At least to me. It's because when you want to create now here, for example, a article no author dot spec dot gs, here by defining is this test, which is something quite old. Okay, here you want to mark is the servers, which is something great. All right, and here you want to say, hey, create article with the author. Right now you're not seeing what I'm telling to you, because no, because this is something that I was working yesterday, and here we are. Is this one? No, it's not. This in fact is, oh, it's the code. It's the code itself. Yeah, it's in fact is this is here. Okay, so this is now a real life test of a custom hook component, because I want to test now the article create, but the article create has custom hooks like user story, and also have is hooks here, right? So this make it harder to actually test that. It's not impossible, but make it hard to test your component. So first things first, here we are saying, hey, let's go to create the article here, right? This object that comes from the service, okay? Let's gonna mock the result from that, okay? We're going now is to say, hey, I think I need to, that's right. Okay. Okay, I need to now is doing something like this, which is cd front end, say npm install, open up a new fish or shell here, cd backend, okay, say npm run or npm install the dependency. As well, I need to run is the database, which is SQLite. I think it's SQLite 3. All right, and by open is the file here called db. No, it's not. Here is open db dot SQLite. Okay, it actually generates this one. Oh, but it generates that. Nope, not here. Move to this. We need to actually move to the proper directory, which is the backend. Here we define then our test like SQLite 3. That's right. And now I want you to open is this file. Open the file name, which is db.sqlite. SQLite. All right. Okay. All right. Cool. So now that we got our 3 servers, and actually this crash, I don't because we are, okay, I get it. Yeah. Removing a recursive force way, the node model. Didn't install anything here. Okay. It fails because we are not in the proper current node version. Exactly. That's why it failed. This actually does not fail, but it should. So I prefer to remove this no folder. Okay. And then use the proper Node.js version. Use MVN 12, version 12.9 on the front end, as well as MVN use version 12.9, please. Okay. And then you got it. Yep. Then you got it. Okay. Now we can actually install this. And being install all the necessary libraries on the front end as well as on the back end. Okay. I think they're not using is no. I think they're using is Yarn. So let me remove the node model here, and then use Yarn for that, and remove also remove is the package log.json. I'm gonna use this Yarn. Yarn install or Yarn star. Command not found. Really? Didn't we install Yarn? Okay. Okay, but it throw a couple error here. Because again, we need to use is the Yarn for this project. Say Yarn, but it say, hey, command was not found. That's quite puzzling because I already installed Yarn. Okay, so you say, hey, I'm going to install this package manager here, yarn for that. They are quite performant solutions like that, because for example PNPN, which now is the way how, so instead of downloading the package JSON per project, you're going to store that on a particular folder and generate symlink out of this. So it saves time, it saves space in your computer, especially if you have multiple npm projects. Okay, so when get started, I just wanted to install that. Okay, core pack enable, then initialize a new project. What if I want to install a older version of yarn? Core pack. You may notice by reading our installation guide, we don't tell you to run npm global yarn to install yarn. We even recommend against it. The reason is simply, just like your project dependency must be locked, so should be the package manager itself. Here we go. Okay, but in any case, because this is an old project, we're gonna install this globally. All right. Yep. So yarn star, yarn install. We just gonna say yarn as a way to install that. Yarn install. Invalid value here. So yarn lock. So yarn install. It tells me that. You say, hey, this is an invalid value. What? Perhaps we are working with yarn new version. No, we are. Okay. But yarn install, installation of yarn. Yeah, why not? It's like yarn version. Exactly, what we're using is that version. Then getting started here. Installation and usage, yarn init, yarn install dependencies. Yep, we want to install dependency, yarn. Syntax error value here with the yarn lock. Do you modify that? Yarn. So on the backing, it worked as expected. It worked like a charm. Say yarn def or yarn star. Okay, the backend works like a charm. Now the front end, they say, what the F is this, bro? I'm not sure we are deleting all of this. Okay, let me remove. Okay, I get it. Let me remove is the remote force package log JSON, and now run yarn install. I mean yarn itself. There's a way to run this. Nope. That's quite interesting. It's like the yarn log has some issues. Well, no problem. I'm going to install that with npm. And we are actually installing in the proper version. what? Now this npm run star failed to compile filter. Okay, now that you got it. And we persist the data from our previous build, which is great. Okay, so far so good. Okay, but what we want to do is now run is the test environment or the test pipeline. npm run t, or you can say for short npm t. All right. So here's when things started to get interesting. Article no author. It say, hey, you know what? This service, okay, yep. You pass me is the wrong property here. Here now it's saying, hey, warning, an update to region dropdown inside a test was not wrapped. It's because we're not only is setting is the value here for the title as well as the content where we already have that, okay, here with our article create we already defined that data as the content and as the title like so, but also do not select any author here, but it say, hey, warning, an update to region dropdown inside a test was not wrapped in act. When testing, code that causes React state updates should be wrapped into act. Fire events that update state. That's quite interesting. Fire state that update state. And it's because it is updating the state since we are doing is control form. Why is that? And what is that? Control form is the way how you do is this. Okay? That's what happened with control form. And most of the time, this is a bad pattern that we shouldn't follow. In fact, we should use is the object or the form data as a way to let the browser to handle all of this for us. That's why we have another libraries like React hook forms, that kind of thing. But now that we identify what the problem is, which is here, to ensure that you're testing the behavior the user will see in the browser, learn about this React wrap test with act. To prepare a component for assertions, wrap the code rendering it and performs update inside act. Call. This makes your test run closer to how React works in the browser. Note, if you use React test rendered, it also provides an act. Export that behaves the same way. For example, let's say we have this counter in a class base. Okay? How can we test this? Depend what you want to test. Okay? Okay, this is the way how you're going to pass and test this. By using this act for synchronous operations, okay, you do is this. Before each, hey, let's go to now set the container here. We're going to create that element here, and then we're going to remove that child from that, or aka mount the element for that. And then it tells you can render an update, a counter, act, react DOM dot create root container dot render the counter. The first render and component it mount. Once the component render the first time, then you're going to select that, expect label to be text to be, you click 0 times, expect the document type you be clicked 0 times, and then you do the second time. Mm-hmm. And then you do the second time. Okay. So, because we are firing an event change, okay, and the behavior we want to test here in our component is, let me take a look at where we are. What? Oh, we were running. Is this npm run def? I mean it's yarn star. That's right. Exactly. Okay, there you got it. Cool. Cool. And because the behavior we want us to test is this, okay, on click, show this, we wanted to test that here on the article, and we're gonna say, hey, I want this to now get me that element or find that test ID by element. Okay, so when I do click, I want to now look for something. Because this is how you can do this. Fire an event here. Fire event change, and you target this. This my way, another way of how you can do this. Okay, because here you're saying is the first time the given element does not have a value setter, the fire event here. Okay, simulate no author selection. All right. Simulate no author selection. The question is that what fire events are doing? You know what fire events are doing? The firing events like this. What fire event is doing? Most projects have a few use cases for fire event, but the majority of the time you should probably use testing library user event. Different from fire event. Fire event dispatch down events, whereas user events simulate full interaction, which may fire multiple events and do additional checks along the way. Testing library built-in fire events is a lightweight wrapper around the browser's low-level dispatch event API. Makes sense. Which allow developers to trigger any event on any element. The problem is that the browser usually does more than just trigger one event for one interaction. For example, when a user types into a text box, the element has to become focused, and then keywords and inputs are fired in the selection of the value. Okay, this more is more imperative. Do this and do this and do that. Well, user events allow you to describe a user interaction instead of a concrete event. It adds visibility and interactivity check along the way and manipulate them just like the user interaction in the browser will. Manipulate them just like the user interaction in the browser will. It factors in that the browser, e.g., won't let the user click a hidden element or type a disabled text box. This is why you should use user event to test your component. There are, however, some user interaction or aspect of this that are implementing and thus can be described with user event. So writing tests with user event. Here you're using is the user event for on the testing library as a way to say, hey, user.click.screen get by role button name click me here. Okay. Inlining Import, render, and screen from the framework library of your choice. Mm-hmm. Note that while directly invoking API such as event click, which will trigger setup internally and is still supported in version 14, this option exists to ease the mitigation between 13 and 14, and for simple tests, we recommend using the method of the instance event user event setup. Mm-hmm. So away the user click with this button, the name click, get rolled by, it's going to expose, or it should it expose an HTML element for that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. On click. All right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting. This kind of test quickly becomes quite complex, pretty easy. But the idea here is to write your test the way your users will. Mm-hmm. Native testing library. As well as setup here. Configuring just with TestUtil. Mm-hmm. 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 Core API and get started. About queries. Okay, okay, okay. But this is now the new way of how you should do this. You render the component. I don't think you can see what I'm looking right now. Okay, it's here. This is the new way of how you can do this. Overview. Query are method that testing library give you to find elements on the page. There are several types of query, get, find, and query. The difference between them is whether the query will throw an error if no element is found, or if it will return a promise. It will return a promise and retry. For the testing library, that's a subtle difference here. With this, you can use all of this type of query, get, find, and query. The thing is that one can return if the element was not found, the other is a promise. Okay. And depending on what page content you are selecting, different queries may be more or less appropriate. See the priority guide. Query accessible to everyone. Oh my god. Oh, this is a huge universe of testing. My god. Okay, query accessible to everyone. Query that reflect the experience of visual mouse user as well as those are used as system technologies. And the other is this semantic query, HTML5 and area compliance selectors. Note that the user experience of interacting with this attribute vary greatly across browser and assistant technologies. And the other is test ID. The user cannot see or hear this, so this is only recommended for cases where you can match by role or text, or it doesn't make sense. The text is dynamic. It is funny because a lot of people actually are using its test ID, because now it makes your test much more easy to, it makes your test robust, aka your code or your implementation is decoupling from your test. Moly moly. Oh my god. Anyway, because this is not a course based on testing, this is just a course on, how do I put it? On, yeah, this is not a course based on testing, not at all. This is a course on, okay, on how you can write React, how you can write production ready React applications, and here is with testing. Okay, so all right, it'll make much more sense to say, hey, you know what, if you want to take a deep dive into testing, that's great. What I'm gonna see is what is the Brian Hall methodology to do those kind of tests. And because this is the way how we test custom hooks, okay, the old way of doing that, now there is a new way to do that.
We had to write 37 lines of code to test 8. Not great. It was a pretty simple hook. And once you write something like this, you can test any hook this way, right? And this is how we used to have to write things like this. Luckily, now with testing library,
So luckily, we have to write 37 lines of code to test 8. Luckily, yeah, luckily, now with testing library, luckily, now with a testing library, we have is we can actually get something out of this. We can actually get something out of this, which is the React hook.
you can actually get something out of it that allows you to test hooks directly without having to do all this faking stuff. So let's try and giving that a shot. So we're going to expect and test, render, we got that, query client provider, we need all of this stuff. You do need the query client. You can delete all this get and read list stuff. Okay, and instead of doing it, we'll just rewrite this test totally. Now we can say const result is assigned render hook. We got render hook from.
And then is when you're gonna pass
so
all
render
of that.
Hook. This is relatively new. This is new since I last taught the course, I think. And you just give it a function of what you're trying to get out, right? So this is all we're going to need for that. And then we have to we do have to give it a wrapper, right? So this is going to be a function with children. And this is where we can give it query client provider. The query client is assigned.
No, it's a client, by the way.
Query client. And you just give it children in the middle of that. There. Okay? All of this rigmarole will end up with result, and result will be whatever you expected back.
Yeah, so what we expect is a hook back.
So now I can say const read list
So this is interesting.
status result.current, and I can say expect
expect read list to be
to have length 0.
to have 0,
0,
to have length
and
0.
expect status to be loaded. So, all right, we failed. What happened?
Okay, so now this is the new way of doing this by using this uh, nice, convenient. Let me actually get out of here. Exactly. Let me actually get out of here. I want to get out of here and open up this one. Mm, Context 14. That's right. All right. Good. All right. And context 14. You got it. Now the new way of doing this is that we can get rid of this and make use of uh, something called render hook, which is a function that comes from the testing library, render hook. In here, you're gonna pass is the hook and the wrappers, the things that this component needs to load or you need to pass to render properly. So here's the use breed list, which is our custom hook, as well as the option which is called wrapper, an object called wrapper, where here's where we're gonna pass is that as a function that it is received is the children property. Nope, children property. Okay. And then is when you're going to now return is that as a JSX, which is doing this, evaluate this JavaScript. I want you to evaluate this expression. That's what the parenthesis is telling about here. And the expression is the query client provider. And then passing here is the client option with the query client, followed by the children components that you want to render here. And here's when you say, hey, I want you to expect the breed list to have 0 length and the loading to contain that. So when we run our test here, it fails. Why is that? Because it say, hey, children, oh, is this one. It say render hooks. Oh, because we're passing as a reference, we need to pass is the function as it is. And now it says use reality X. Wait, what is the when it failed? I'm not sure. Yeah, wait, it's failed. Okay. What about now? Okay, when it failed is this, show an empty list. Okay, I don't know which test failed here. It's supposed to say here test fail after the next text fail. Show an empty list with no animal. He say type error cannot read property of null reading use context. In a model use bread list. Use bread list. Query client provider. Model.use bread list is say, hey, use query here. But we are actually making use of that. In fact, I'm passing you the query client. Do we need need to mark that, or I think I need to pass something here. It's like TypeScript error, not really property of null. Perhaps we pass this empty object here. Test failed one, test failed one. The thing here is that I want to clear here a little bit and say, hey, I want you to now run this test and see from where it failed. Invalid hook call. Okay. Hooks can only be called inside of the body of a function component. Question is, are we calling that from testing library React? This is a valid here? Render hook? Yep. This could happen one of the following reasons. You might have mismatching version of React and the render, such as React DOM. You might be breaking the rule of hooks. You might have more than one copy of React in the same page, in the same app. So it say, hey, use breathless test GSX show. It's because you are expecting that this is to be, but this is actually is a TSX, bro. Okay. Not sure if this actually has to impact things here a little bit. Argument of type string query status not assignable to a parameter of type initial props of a node. But this is what the React hook actually expect here to receive is the renders initial props. Okay, so import this, allow you to render a hook within a test React component without having to create a component yourself. That's right. Okay. The funny thing here is that, okay, let me see the signature here. Argument of type string query is not assignable to a parameter or type here. So this is telling me that, hey, I am expecting is that this be a function here. You look at this, that's another reason why you should be familiar for this. The less you fight the compiler, the better off. Which is telling you, hey, you are passing this, but what but that's not what I am. That's not what I expect. In fact, I expect something like this, which is this is on the first parameter. Yes, provide no match to the signature initial props unknown. So in this particular case, say, hey, pass me is the function that I need to. So when I say this, pass me here is a function that I'm expecting to. For this test it's like empty, which is that. but render hook should return is an array of that, as well as a loading state. Okay, this is how you can define that this is what is going to return. So the render hooks, render hook hook result, which will be is a string for that, as well as the query options here. This is what is expected here. I say type is not assignable to render hook string query options. Okay, because query options need to define is some other couple things. Question is, do we need to define this? Can I prefer to rely on the inference, a TypeScript inference, right? Render hook result must have a symbol iterator method that returns an iterator. Isn't this return this? Okay. Type render hook string like this must have, okay, it's returning that as well as unknown. Must have a symbol iterator method that returns an iterator. That's quite interesting. Exactly, because you don't know if TypeScript is being finicky about this or not. And the funny thing of this is that because this is expecting to send a function for that, all right, and then and the second argument is that, but in this case say, hey, object is not iterable, cannot read property symbol of symbol iterator. That's quite interesting. Say error object is not as iterable. And the object that is returned is not an iterable. Oh, they make sense. It makes sense. What is the object here that you're returning? It's a must have. Okay. It's not an iterator. So what is the? So here we are returning something called result, and this is when you have is now as your value here. So result.current. Here's when you say, hey, you know what? Now let me, the structure is this. That's one of the reasons of why I love Breathless as well as loading. That's one of the reasons why I love is TypeScript here. Because it say, hey, this is the shape. I got a particular way to communicate that, an industry standard to communicate that. Get used to it. Result.current. That's what it is. So now when you run this, the test pass as expected. Okay, that was quite interesting. And the way how you can test is your custom hooks. Alright. Quite interesting, by the way. I must say. Totally. Okay. 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 All right. All right. All right. All right. So that'll be all for this video. Take care. Bye bye.